The day had started like any other, but there was an unusual weight in the air that I couldn't ignore. I had known the truth for weeks, maybe months. The small inconsistencies, the hushed phone calls, the late nights she could never explain. Caroline had tried to hide her affair, thinking she was clever, thinking she was untouchable. But I had observed quietly, collected evidence, and watched her carefully, all the while maintaining my calm. I wasn't angry yet. I wasn't desperate. I was calculating, patient, letting the storm build until the moment was just right. And now, as I saw her walk into the room, confident and unsuspecting, I knew it was time to deliver the lesson she had no idea she would learn. She finally spoke the question I had been waiting for, her voice trembling just slightly with fear, confusion, and the faintest hint of hope. "Why don't you want me anymore?" she asked, her eyes searching mine for the familiar warmth, the spark of forgiveness, the reassurance she assumed I still felt. But I wasn't that man anymore. I could see the tiny flicker of panic in her pupils, the micro expressions betraying the realization that she might have overplayed her hand. Her carefully constructed arrogance, the same one that had allowed her to betray me so casually, began to falter, and I knew my calm, precise response would hit harder than any anger could. I smiled. Not a sneer, not a grimace, just a slow, quiet, unshakable smile that conveyed all the control I had regained. "Because you already gave what was mine to someone else," I said, each word deliberate, carrying the weight of truth and the sting of betrayal. The impact was immediate. Her face froze mid-expression, confusion clouding her features first, followed by disbelief, and then a subtle creeping panic. She realized instantly that I had known everything, that my calm was not ignorance but awareness, that my patience was not weakness but quiet power. For a brief suspended moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't even blink fast enough to shake off the realization that she had miscalculated completely. Her next words came out in a broken whisper, tentative, desperate. I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice trembling as she tried to inject excuses to rewind the moment, to undo the damage she had caused. But my silence answered more powerfully than any argument could. I didn't need to defend myself. I didn't need to explain how I had discovered everything. The truth was self-evident, carried in my expression, my posture, the calm assurance that I no longer needed her presence in my life. Every word she spoke fell flat, echoing emptily against the solid walls of my resolve. She searched my eyes, pleading, hoping for hesitation, maybe a crack of vulnerability that could let her charm work its magic again. But I offered none. My eyes, steady and unyielding, reflected the clarity of a man who had been wronged but refused to be broken. The room seemed to shrink around us as her bravado melted completely. The woman who had once manipulated with ease now trembled under the quiet weight of truth. Every thought she had imagined would bring reconciliation, every assumption she had relied on was crushed in a single serene moment. Minutes stretched as her panic took hold. She sat down, shaking slightly, exhausted by the sheer intensity of her own recklessness meeting the calm resolve of someone she had betrayed. She had underestimated the quiet power of observation, the patient accumulation of evidence, the devastating force of calm authority. And now, with her every attempt at justification failing, she was left facing the consequences of her own choices. The very thing she had given away, my trust, my heart, my devotion, could never be returned. And she felt the weight of that reality crushing her from within. Her apologies came next, soft, fractured, genuine in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. She tried to explain, to rationalize, to soften the blow of her betrayal with words. But they were ineffective. The damage had been done. The lesson had been delivered, and my calm, collected demeanor had made it undeniable. She had overstepped, miscalculated, And now she was fully exposed to the consequences of her actions. Every micro expression, every subtle tremor, every faltering step she took reminded her that her betrayal had left a permanent mark. By the end of the night, she was subdued, quiet, and fully aware that our relationship could never return to what it had been. My calmness had been the hammer, the undeniable force that shattered her assumptions and left her humbled. She had learned that giving what was sacred to another person leaves an irrevocable void, and that the man who guards what is his cannot simply be swayed by charm, excuses, or hope. The lesson was clear, and it would remain with her indefinitely. I walked away from that conversation with nothing but a quiet sense of closure. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to chase her. The calm, measured delivery of truth had been more powerful than any confrontation, more permanent than any pleading, and infinitely more satisfying than revenge could ever be. She had faced the consequences of her choices, and I had maintained my integrity and strength throughout. As the night drew to a close, her presence lingered like a shadow of regret. But I didn't need to engage with it. The message had been delivered. The lesson had been absorbed, and my calm, composed response had spoken louder than any shouting, confrontation, or dramatics ever could. She had underestimated me, and she would never make the same mistake again. And in that knowledge, I found a quiet satisfaction that carried me through the night and beyond.